In the end, I died on Nick's wedding day. The lavish ceremony was live-streamed for the world to see. He looked so gentle as he held his bride's arm. I had already signed the papers to donate my body. I just never imagined my donation would make the news. Famed actor Peter Wilson passes away after illness. His final act a gift of love. A single news alert brought the ceremony to a halt. Nick bolted from the venue like a man possessed, but he never even got to see my body. The gay romance series I starred in became a surprise hit. During a press event, a reporter asked about the relationship between the two male leads off-screen. Nick frowned. "We're just colleagues. I hope people don't read too much into it." The reporter wouldn't let it go. "But everyone is shipping you two as a couple. What are your thoughts on that?" Before I could answer, the man beside me said coldly, "It's kind of gross. Isn't it?" The wall of cameras, the relentless strobing of flashbulbs, the adoring crowd, everyone's attention was on us. This was the kind of scene I never even dared to dream of. But standing here now, I couldn't feel a shred of happiness. "Oh haha, Mr. Brooke is such a joker. We all know Peter Wilson has always been a rising star at your company. Did you two have any unforgettable experiences filming this series together?" A reporter pressed on. The show's producer was desperately trying to signal us, his eyes practically begging me to do something. Nick, growing impatient, started to push past the reporters, but I reached out and grabbed his sleeve. The move sent a wave of screams through the venue. "Oh my God, I'm dying. They're holding hands. Yes, I can die happy. My ship is real." He spun around, his eyes filled with undisguised shock and disgust. I stubbornly refused to let go, looked him in the eye, and said, "Everyone, from the cast to the crew, poured their hearts and souls into this show. Everyone gave it their all that summer without a second thought to create the work you see today." Maybe my words finally brought Nick back to his senses. He brushed my hand away and gave a faint humph in agreement. I remember one scene where I was drowning and Nick's character had to save me. I continued, "I can't swim, so I almost actually suffocated in the water." Nick was the first one to realize I was really drowning. That wasn't the answer on the script. That scene had been cut because I'd gotten hurt, but I was being selfish. Sure enough, when Nick heard my answer, he stared at me, lost in thought for a moment. What I didn't say was that he had kissed me underwater. It was to give me air, but it was also the first time I knew that the shameful secret I had guarded so carefully was, in fact, reciprocated. My answer allowed the fan event to stumble forward. The interactive games they had planned were cut, and the meticulously prepared event ended in a hurry. The lights dimmed, and the crowd dispersed. In the most hidden corner, my lover pinned me to the wall. In the dim light of the underground garage, a smirk played on Nick's lips. "What's this, Peter? Weren't you putting on a great show just now? Why are you acting so reserved all of a sudden?" I turned my head to dodge his touch and whispered, "Nick, what happened?" Nick's hand shot out and he shoved me hard against the wall. "Don't call me that. It makes me sick," he snarled, pulling out his phone and shoving it in my face. The moment I saw the screen, a chill ran through my entire body. In the grainy, dark video, I was wedged between two industry bigwigs, the angle making us look uncomfortably close. I was linking arms with one of them, our wine glasses crossed. My own voice, full of smiles, said, "As long as you two can help me out, I'll do whatever it takes." Then, one of them casually put his hand on me, and I didn't resist. The video ended there, leaving the rest to the imagination. "Peter, just tell me you were forced into it, that there's another reason, and I'll believe you," he asked, his eyes red, a note of desperation in his voice. "No one forced me," I said calmly, tracing the mole on my palm. "I just thought it seemed like a good shortcut." "Peter, wasn't what I gave you enough? You still needed to go groveling to other people, even if it meant—" Nick trailed off, his eyes bloodshot. In a fit of rage, he threw the phone to the ground. "What about me, then? Were you with me for connections, too?" Nick asked quietly, his head down. When I didn't answer, he stormed off. The roar of his car's engine seemed to vent his frustration. A golden boy like him had probably never known the taste of betrayal. Meeting someone as tainted as me was probably a mistake from the very beginning. I gave a bitter smile, bent down, and carefully picked up the pieces of his shattered phone. Then I made a call. "Hey, Anna, can you help me contact that hospital we talked about before? Nick's stunt at the fan meet, tearing down our ship, had backfired with the fans. Soon, Nick Brooke is a hypocrite was trending on X. Every detail from the event was dissected online and contrasted sharply with the sweet, behind-the-scenes footage the studio had released. The show is almost over, so now that he's done milking the shippers for all they're worth, he's tearing it all down. So tacky. The prince of the entertainment world is just too good for the rest of us. If you're so high and mighty, don't take a role in a gay romance series. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It's disgusting. The Brooke family had been in the entertainment industry for years and should have been able to handle this sort of thing with ease. But this time, the fans were unusually united and persistent. The comments on Nick's page were a total bloodbath. Actors have an obligation to promote their projects. What Nick did shows a complete lack of professionalism. The studio could sue us for damages, and what's more, this kind of behavior is going to make his future career path a lot harder, my manager Anna said, worriedly. While the doctor was examining me, I posted an update. Thanks for the throat lozenges, Mr. Brooke. I shouldn't have made you mad yesterday. Forgive me? The picture was of a certain brand of lozenges that Nick had given me on set when my throat was sore from all the lines. I wasn't like Nick. His father was a famous director, and his family had run an entertainment empire for years. So even in the murky waters of this industry, he could live as he pleased, consequences be damned. But I had clawed my way up from the very bottom since my debut. I knew exactly how to please the fans. As expected, the moment I posted on X, the public narrative shifted to a playful will-they-won't-they story between me and Nick. The same fans who build you up can also tear you down. A storm can brew in an instant. Nick's manager called Anna to thank her, but I could hear Nick yelling in the background. Tell him to get lost. I don't need his fake, phony acting. Anna glanced at me awkwardly. I popped one of the lozenges into my mouth and pretended I hadn't heard a thing. The show continued its successful run, its popularity unwavering. The topic of me and Nick dominated the trending lists every day. But after that day, I never had the chance to see him again. Until a dinner party crawling with industry bigwigs. Peter, a dinner like this is a huge opportunity for us. Honestly, if the show hadn't been such a blockbuster, we'd never get access to this level of connections. But your health? Anna trailed off. Anna had watched me come up every step of the way. She was more than my manager. She was my friend. I knew what she meant, but none of that mattered to me anymore. The rumor is the Brooke family wants to capitalize on this momentum and launch Nick into feature films. A lot of major directors and producers will be there tonight. Anna continued, a hint of regret in her voice. I looked down, rubbing the mole on my palm. After a long moment, I said, I'll go. Anna looked at me, surprised, then gently patted my shoulder and turned to leave. I was alone in the vast hospital room. The last rays of sunset cast mottled shadows on the floor through the window screen. The orange glow against the cold, white hospital walls created a kind of fractured beauty. I've never liked being alone, but in the end, I walked this dead-end road by myself. My dad died when I was young. When I was 8, my mom took me to the city for the first time and even bought me an ice cream cone. It was strawberry, a flavor more delicious than anything I'd ever tasted. It was hot that day, and sweat trickled down the wrinkles on my mother's face. I held the ice cream up for her to have a bite, but she just shook her head. I think I saw her crying, but it's been so long, I might be misremembering. My mother left me at a school for the deaf. She told me not to speak, and if I did that, I could wait there for her to come get me. I waited for a long, long time, but she never came. Terrified of being kicked out, I pretended to be deaf and mute. At least there I had enough to eat and warm clothes to wear. Sometimes we even got meat and eggs. I told myself over and over that my mother did it for my own good, that she would definitely come back for me. Slowly, I learned sign language, but I forgot how to speak. In the midst of that near-hopeless, day-after-day waiting, my fate took a turn. In my 5th year at the school, a group of people came looking for kids to be in a movie. Luckily, because of my looks, I and 2 other children were chosen. We were cast in the film Silence, not really understanding what was happening. That was the first time anyone had ever called me beautiful. It was also when I met Nick. Nick was the star of the movie. Even though he was about my age, he radiated a light I had never seen before. During a break on set, Nick had someone buy us all ice cream. When he handed one to me, he gestured wildly, asking which flavor I wanted. I looked at the pink ice cream in his hand and, in a daze, blurted out, strawberry. My voice was quiet, raspy from years of disuse. But Nick's eyes flew open, and he grabbed my hand as if he discovered some kind of treasure. You can talk? You can hear? Haha, you're not deaf and mute. His voice was so loud it drew everyone's attention. Only then did I realize what I'd done. I started flailing my hands and making woo sounds, trying to cover up my mistake. Nick looked at me, confused. He couldn't understand my sudden panic and fear, because only I knew that if I wasn't deaf and mute, I would have nowhere to go. I would be homeless. In those long years of waiting, I had already learned what deception was, what it meant to be abandoned. But looking at the shocked faces around me, I knew I probably couldn't go back to that place. I told the teachers and the film crew everything, explaining why I had lied. I just never expected that after hearing my story, Nick would seek me out. I'm sorry, I didn't know. But don't be scared. I already talked to my grandpa, and he's willing to sponsor you. You won't be homeless. You can go to a regular school, said Nick, who was half a head taller than me, his voice soft as he looked down at me. The sunlight, which had been harsh just moments before, seemed to soften as it fell on him. For years afterward, I could never forget his bright eyes and the smile on his lips. I never imagined that one day I would be able to stand by his side, to have his gaze linger on me. And I certainly never imagined that the look in his eyes would turn from affection to disgust. It was as if beautiful things were never meant for me. Even if I held them for a moment, I would eventually lose them. The party was on a yacht, and everyone who was anyone in the industry was there. I wore my most expensive suit and my finest accessories. But even a thick layer of foundation couldn't hide the sallow tone of my skin, and my gaunt frame barely filled out the clothes that used to fit perfectly. Surrounded by a crowd, Nick held a wine glass, speaking eloquently with a gentle look in his eyes. But when he saw me, the gentleness vanished, replaced by pure disgust. I found a seat in the darkest corner, trying my best to disappear into the shadows. I knew I shouldn't have come, but I just wanted to see him one more time. The wine in my hand was cold and bitter. The doctor and Anna had both warned me not to drink. But for me, at this point, what difference did it make? Mr. Wilson, Director Smith would like to invite you over for a drink, a staff member said, leaning in to whisper in my ear. Director Smith had a reputation in the industry for being a scumbag who had preyed on countless young actors and actresses. Before I could refuse, Nick strode toward me, yanked me up by the arm and said, "The connections Director Smith has are top tier. Shouldn't you hurry over there?" His gaze was loaded with meaning, his tone mocking and contemptuous. I knew he got like this when he was angry. He looked fierce, but he was really just a cat with its fur on end. I suddenly smiled. I wanted to reach out and ruffle his hair, but I stopped myself. Then I stood up and followed the staff member to the director's table. Well, Peter. Come. Sit. The man who spoke reached for my arm, but I sidestepped him. What's the matter, Peter? Has it been so long you've forgotten your old friends? The speakers were two well-known producers, the same two men from the video on Nick's phone. A wave of nausea washed over me. I stood up to leave, but a pair of warm hands pushed me firmly back into my seat. Gentlemen, of all the artists at our company, Peter here is the most sensible. Give him the resources and he'll do anything you ask. Isn't that right? Nick said with a smile. Haha, we're all friends here. Come on, Peter, have a drink, Director Smith said, signaling a waiter to pour me some wine. Nick snatched the bottle and filled the glass in front of me to the brim. Aren't you going to toast Director Smith? The lead in his new art house film is a role to die for. I took the glass from Nick and, fighting back my discomfort, drained it in one gulp. The cold liquid turned searing hot as it went down my throat. It felt like my organs were on fire, and a thin sheen of sweat broke out on my forehead. Peter's blushing. Haha, how charming, Director Smith remarked, eyeing me up and down. With a crash, Nick shattered the glass in his hand. In a panic, I reached to check his hand, but he shoved me away. I'm going to get another glass. You all carry on, Nick said and stormed off without a second glance at me. Peter, you haven't forgotten that we were the ones who cleaned up that little mess for you last time, have you? One of them said, his eyes following Nick's retreating back. Remembering what happened, I refilled my glass and downed it again. I haven't forgotten. I hope you two haven't either. After that, I drank with them one glass after another. Eventually, the pain in my stomach went numb. I just felt an overwhelming sadness in my heart. Nick never came back. I figured he must have left. Before I completely passed out, I sent a text to Anna asking her to pick me up, and then I blacked out. In a haze, I felt someone pulling at me, then someone trying to hold me. I struggled desperately until I fell into an embrace that smelled of gardenias. I drifted off to sleep in that familiar, comforting scent. The familiar smell of antiseptic woke me from that beautiful, gardenia-scented dream. Are you insane? How could you drink? Anna scolded me from my bedside. Drink or not, the result's the same, I said flatly. I've already handled your contract termination. Nick didn't give you any trouble. He just said to follow the agreement. When do you want to start systematic treatment? You're still young. You can't just give up, Anna said, handing me a stack of treatment plans before turning away to secretly wipe a tear. It's no use. I don't want chemo. Anna, I want to go home, but I don't have a home. The sunlight outside the window was too bright. It made my eyes water. Who would have thought a tiny mole could develop into an incurable disease? I had just gotten back from a movie with Nick when I received the diagnosis. In the dark theater, we had chosen seats in the far corner, our fingers intertwined like any other couple. Peter, I just want to stay like this with you forever. Nick's voice was drowned out by the movie's booming sound effects, but I heard him, and my face turned bright red. Back then, I thought that even if it meant being this careful, this hidden from the world, I still wanted to love him. But fate, it seemed, had played a cruel joke on me. If only I had stayed at that school for the deaf. If I had never seen the light, maybe death would have been a release. But now I really don't want to die. After the Brooke family sponsored me, I finished my education and, on a selfish whim, even got into film school. By then, Nick had been a child star for years, with many hit roles to his name, making him one of the hottest actors around. I watched him from afar, dreaming an unspeakable dream. When I first left the school for the deaf, my speech had regressed badly, and I couldn't communicate normally. Nick visited me often, teaching me how to speak again, word by word. He said he was the one who dragged me out of that school, so he had to be responsible for me. He would bring me food and toys I had never seen before, as well as books, clothes, stationery, daily necessities, and money. Later, he let it slip that the Brooke family hadn't agreed to sponsor me back then. He had been supporting me with his own savings all those years. After graduating, I got a few small parts and finally broke into the entertainment industry. But without connections or resources, it was an uphill battle. One day, Nick came to me with a contract. Your humble servant is preparing to sign you, he said. And yes, it's with my own savings again. I laughed at him for still getting an allowance at his age, but he just shrugged it off, saying that no matter how old you are, you're still a kid in the eyes of your elders, and he deserved it. I've spent my entire life savings raising you, so you'd better work hard and make me some money. I need to prove my instincts were right, Nick joked, but I knew he was just trying to save me from feeling awkward. Under the Brooke family's management, I finally got more opportunities. Not just TV series, but variety shows too. I slowly started to build a name for myself, until Nick came to me with a script. It was a huge IP, but it was a gay romance, and no one was willing to take the roles. I'm planning to take this role. What do you think? Want to work with me? He asked with a smile. In that moment, I tried to think of a million ways to seem less excited. Yeah, I said, nodding as if I didn't care, but inside, my heart was soaring. To work with Nick, in a show where we were both leads, it was something I hadn't even dared to dream of. Because over our long years together, I had gradually, painfully realized my feelings for him. It wasn't just gratitude, not just friendship, but an impulse I was ashamed to admit. Every time I met his gentle gaze, I hated myself for my filthy thoughts. If he knew, would he be disgusted? If he knew, would I still be able to stay by his side like this? So I desperately suppressed my feelings, even intentionally distancing myself. Hey, you're not happy about it? Nick slung an arm over my shoulder and leaned in to see my expression. His breath was too close, warm on my face. I looked up in a panic. Our lips brushed for just a second. We both froze. The thrill of young love is so intense. A brief touch can make your whole world tremble. I was lost in his closeness, yet disgusted by my own secret desires. Just sign it and give it back to me. I have to go, Nick said, his ears turning an unnatural shade of red before he threw out the words and fled. I stood there, stunned, unable to move for a long time. I didn't even dare look in a mirror. I felt like my entire body was about to burst into flames. It was a historical fantasy series, with much of it filmed in the remote mountains. The crew's accommodations were limited, so Nick simply had me move into his room. The conditions are better here, and there's plenty of room for both of us. Just don't snore. I didn't refuse. The shoot went smoothly. Even the most difficult emotional scenes between the two male leads earned the director's approval. Wow, I was worried you two would be too reserved. But I never expected you to be so professional, the director laughed. The comment hit too close to home, and I didn't dare speak. Nick, however, said casually, Peter and I are close. It makes it easier to get into character. He may have meant nothing by it, but for me it meant everything. The seeds buried deep in my heart began to sprout. As the plot progressed, the bond between the two male leads deepened, and Nick and I fell deeper into our roles. Even the crew started to joke around with us, as if in this isolated world, Nick and I had really become a couple. When it was hot and I lost my appetite, Nick would find ways to get me food from town. When I got bitten by mosquitoes, Nick would personally apply the ointment. There was one scene where I fell into the water and Nick had to save me. For the sake of a beautiful shot, I had to hold my breath and sink slowly while Nick dove in after me. The visibility in the wild pond was low. Even though I was prepared, the moment I hit the water, I panicked. Halfway down, I choked on a mouthful of water. I tried to grab the safety rope on my harness but fumbled and unlatched it instead. As I watched the light on the surface grow more distant, my mind replayed the image of Nick holding my hand, telling me to be careful. Nick had such captivating eyes. When he smiled, they sparkled like light on water. So beautiful. His lips were thin, but the corners were always turned up in a slight smile. So beautiful. In my days, Nick's face truly appeared before me. He held me and then he kissed me. Along with his kiss came air. I greedily sucked in the breaths he gave me, and as my consciousness returned, I saw his wide eyes just inches from mine. My senses returned, and I tried to push him away, but he held me tighter, kissing me deeper. He must be insane, I thought. After that day, I avoided Nick at every turn. I could clearly sense his growing frustration. A scene where the two leads confessed their feelings for each other took countless takes and still wasn't working. Finally, the director gave us half a day off to get back in character. I moved back to my own small room and was lying on the bed, my mind a mess. He only did that to save me, I told myself over and over. Just then, Nick pushed the door open and demanded, "Why are you avoiding me?" "I'm not. You're lying. Are you mad that I kissed you that day?" Nick asked, his voice laced with hurt. Before I could react, he continued, "I'm sorry. I know this must be hard for you to accept. I don't understand it myself. But I don't know what came over me. When you had that accident, I just lost control. I was so afraid of losing you. Nick's words left me frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. You must think it's disgusting. Maybe I just got too into character. But don't worry, after we wrap, I'll never bother you again." Nick's voice grew quieter, taking on a cautious tone I had never heard from him before. He finished speaking and turned to leave. I finally snapped out of it and stood up to grab his arm. It's not disgusting, because my own secret feelings, they're 1,000 times more disgusting than yours, I said, keeping my head down, too afraid to look at him as I carefully voiced the emotions I had suppressed for so long. Nick froze for a second, then looked at me with joyful surprise. "You like me, too?" I gave a slight nod, and he pulled me into a tight embrace. The overwhelming scent of gardenias, the thumping of his heart against my chest, it all told me this wasn't a dream. This is great. This is so great. I thought I was gonna lose you. Looks like my charm is irresistible. Huh? So, tell me, how are your feelings 1,000 times more disgusting? He murmured, his lips brushing against the top of my head. I looked up and met his gaze seriously. "Okay," I said. "I want to tell you everything. All the intense, suppressed, and overwhelming love that had nearly driven me mad. I wanted to tell it all to you." After Nick and I got together, I lived through the happiest time of my life. We used our characters as a shield to express our love in front of everyone. Those little behind-the-scenes moments later went viral online as proof of our real-life romance. But every show must come to an end, and we couldn't hide in that paradise forever. On the last day of filming, after the final night scene, Nick and I sat under a tree. The sky was full of stars, the air filled with the chirping of insects. It was breathtakingly beautiful. "What are your plans after we wrap?" "I was thinking of getting away for a bit," I asked tentatively. "Okay, where to?" "We'll go together. Maybe we should spend some time apart." Sometimes actors can get too deep into their roles. Before I could finish, Nick pulled me into his arms. "What are you trying to say?" "Huh? That your feelings for me are just you being too deep in character?" "Peter," he demanded, his dark eyes fixed on me. Of course not. But you deserve a much brighter future. I shouldn't drag you down this difficult path." Every day I was with Nick, I blamed myself. If it weren't for me, couldn't he live a normal life, marry a woman, and have a smooth, happy life? There are precious few secrets under the spotlight. I was afraid that one day I would become a weapon others used against him. I loved him, which made me want his path to be easier. Nick was stunned for a moment. Then he chuckled and pressed his lips to mine. "I wouldn't walk the easiest path in the world if you weren't on it with me." "Peter, don't even think about leaving me," he said, pulling a bracelet from his pocket. It was a simple cord threaded with a single, perfectly scarlet bead. He tied it around my wrist, then rolled up his own sleeve to show me the identical one on his. "Now you can't run away. You should hide that. We're screwed if someone photographs it," I said, carefully pulling his sleeve back down. I never expected my words to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Soon enough, an intimate picture of us was taken. The email arrived while the show was airing. It contained photos of Nick and me holding hands, kissing, and going in and out of a hotel. It was clear we'd been targeted. The pie is only so big. If you take an extra bite, I go hungry. In this dog-eat-dog world, you don't need a deep-seated grudge to want to ruin someone. I was planning to talk to Nick about how to handle it, but then, during a routine physical, I was diagnosed with melanoma. I had been ready to face any storm with you, but I was forced to bow to fate's cruel mockery and plan, alone, how to protect you. And so, the scene on Nick's phone came to be. I went to that dinner. They demanded 00000 and for me to give up several roles I was in talks for, and even to quit the industry forever. I drank a lot that night, forcing myself to play nice and stomach their vile behavior. At one point, someone thought I was too drunk and tried to make a move. I grabbed a dinner knife, held it to his throat, and said calmly, "I'm here to do business today. And I come at a different price. One I'm afraid you can't afford." "Haha. A misunderstanding, the man said, his face pale. "I'll agree to all your conditions on one premise. No one ever bothers Nick Brooke again." "I think you understand what I mean," I said, holding up a tiny hidden camera. "I'm not afraid of taking you down with me. The money will be in your account within a week. I hope you're people of your word." All their disgusting stories they'd been bragging about all evening were recorded. It might not be enough to convict them, but it would be enough to destroy their careers forever. The color drained from their faces. They never expected I would be willing to go scorched earth. What they didn't know was that a dying man has nothing to lose and everything to gain from courage. I had asked Nick for the 00000. He had laughed and said, "What's this? A dowry?" But he never asked what I needed the money for. Later, that became the evidence I had used him, convincing him even more that I was only with him for connections and personal gain. In the end, I gave up on chemo. I didn't want to spend my last days looking like a wreck. But the result of foregoing chemo was that the cancer spread faster. First, it went to my bones. A deep ache settled into every bone in my body. The slightest misstep could cause a fracture. Anna announced to the public that I was on vacation. My disappearance barely caused a ripple in the industry. The variety show I was a regular on quickly replaced me, and even my most devoted fans found new idols. Nick took a role in a new movie, starring opposite the popular young actress Bella Lynn. Leaked behind-the-scenes footage showed the two of them looking sweet and well-matched. The way Nick looked at Bella was so gentle. I watched that clip over and over, refusing to put my phone down even as my body convulsed in pain. The hospice was by the sea. One day I fell and broke my leg. Anna rushed over to see me. "Oh God, you've gotten so thin," she lamented, her face filled with heartache. "It's fine. At least I don't have to worry about my weight anymore." Haha, I joked. A variety show was playing on the TV. During a game segment, Nick protectively held Bella in his arms, his boyfriend power on full display. In an interview, the host asked Bella about her ideal type. She looked at Nick with a bright, radiant smile, and Nick gazed back at her, his face full of adoration. Seeing me staring at the TV, Anna said, "It's all just for publicity to promote the movie." Anna knew some of what had happened between me and Nick, and she was trying to comfort me. But then the camera angle shifted, and I saw a flash of red under Bella's sleeve. "Now you can't run away." Nick's words still echoed in my ears. I gently pulled the matching bracelet off my own wrist. "Peter, isn't this what you wanted to see? Then why does it hurt so much?" I took another dose of painkillers, but their effect was getting weaker and weaker. "He did ask about you, actually. I just brushed him off like you told me to," Anna said, unable to bear it. "Right. I'm fine," I said, smiling as I saw her out. "The doctor said the cancer cells had recently spread to my brain. I often felt disoriented, and I was sleeping more and more. I dreamed often. I dreamed of Nick holding my hand and saying, 'Don't be afraid. We'll walk this road together. We'll face all the criticism and pressure together.' Other times, I dreamed of him turning his back on me, saying, 'I never knew you were this kind of person. Being with you was the biggest regret of my life.' I woke up in tears every time. Even my nurse couldn't stand it anymore, asking again and again if I really had no family. Family? That word was too much of a luxury for me. I had actually gone back to my childhood village once, searching through my memories. My mother was long gone. The villagers said she had remarried years ago. I had even, against all hope, asked the school for the deaf. They said no one had ever come looking for me. For a long time I had considered Nick my family. But now I had become the person he despised most. Nick and Bella's movie was released. I called Anna. My waking hours were getting shorter and shorter. It was impossible for me to go out alone. Seeing my condition, Anna refused, and the doctors and nurses were strongly against it. My health had declined so rapidly that I couldn't withstand any kind of exertion. I want to see him, even if it's just on the big screen. In the end, Anna gave in. The theater was packed. Everyone was moved by the tragic love story. In the final scene, the heroine dies in the hero's arms. Nick, as the hero, conveyed a heart-wrenching despair and grief that resonated with every person in the audience. I sat hunched in a back row seat, my hat pulled low over my face, tears streaming down my cheeks. Just as the movie ended, the house lights suddenly came on, and the main cast walked out in front of the screen. Only then did I realize this was a screening with a Q&A. I stood up to leave, but then I heard Nick's familiar voice. "Don't go. Don't leave me." I spun around, only to realize he was just reciting a line from the movie for the host. The audience erupted in screams. At that moment, Bella suddenly took Nick's hand. A sharp-eyed fan stood up and asked, "Are the recent rumors about you and Bella dating true?" Startled by the question, Nick seemed lost for a moment. Bella gave his hand a gentle squeeze, and only then did Nick speak. "We weren't planning on announcing it so soon. But yes, Bella and I are dating, and we're planning to get married at the end of the year. We hope to have your blessings." Bella leaned against Nick's arm with a sweet smile. Nick looked down at her, his gaze lingering for a long time. The scene was captured and spread like wildfire online. The internet exploded. Some screamed, "I shipped a real couple. This is the highlight of my life." Others were heartbroken. "New. I'm crushed. Nick is mine." And some were more cynical. "Bella is the only daughter of the Lynn Corporation chairman. The Brooke family is playing the long game. The rich just keep getting richer by consolidating resources." Watching the frenzy in the theater and online, I felt a surge of nausea, and I fought to swallow the taste of blood in my mouth. "Hold on. Just don't do it here." Finally, the event ended. I was about to leave with the crowd when I heard Nick call out, "Anna?" Panicked, I quickly turned away, steadying myself against the back of a chair. "Anna, what are you doing here? Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" Nick said as he walked over. "Oh, it's nothing. I just finished up some work nearby and decided to relax a bit. Great movie. And congratulations. Nick didn't respond. Instead, he kept staring in my direction. What is it? See someone you know? Anna asked, stepping slightly to block his view of me. No, it's just, for a second, I thought, it's nothing, Nick said, looking distracted. I followed Anna out, taking one difficult step after another. I forced myself not to lean on her so Nick wouldn't get suspicious. Nick stood behind us for a long time watching us leave. I could feel it. If I turned around, our eyes would meet. But I fled the scene like a fugitive. I never imagined that goodbye would be our last. After coming back from the theater, I had a fever for over 10 days straight. As much as Anna's heart ached for me, she had her own work to attend to. But before she left, she apologized.
I'm sorry, Peter.
I knew there was a Q&A. I was being selfish. I just wanted you to see him one more time. I was afraid. She couldn't finish, her words choked by sobs. I knew she was afraid I would die without seeing Nick one last time. I don't know what happened between you two, but Peter, he shouldn't treat you like this. And you shouldn't torture yourself like this. It's not worth it. Anna rarely spoke so directly about us, but now her eyes were red, her voice full of earnest pleading. I gently pulled the 4-needle from my arm. The endless infusions made me feel cold to the bone. Nick, he's a good person. I'm the one who failed him. It had been so long since I'd said his name that even the sound of it felt foreign. Thinking of his gentle smile in the theater, I lay in my hospital bed, laughing and crying like a lunatic. After Anna left, during a moment of clarity, I signed the consent form to donate my body. The doctor told me most of my organs were no longer viable and could only be used for medical research. I thought that was fine. My life had no origin and no destination. Being buried anywhere would just be a waste of good earth. After his relationship with Bella blew up online, Nick quickly announced their engagement. Everyone said they were rushing to get married because she was pregnant. Nick and Bella ignored all the online speculation, which only fueled the hype, and their commercial value skyrocketed. A small minority of fans, however, were mourning their sunken ship. They posted old videos of me and Nick from a year ago, questioning whether what he had felt was love. I can't believe it was all an act. But my faves, one is engaged, and the other has disappeared. This was the only time in my life I shipped something so hard. I can't accept this ending. They flooded the comments on my social media accounts. Some old fans even went to Anna's page asking about me. Anna had no choice but to post a vague update. Thank you for your concern for Peter. He is unwell and currently resting. Not long after, Anna called me. By then, I couldn't get out of bed. I could only lie there, day after day, waiting in agony for the end. Peter, Nick contacted me. He's asking for your address, Anna said, her voice tentative. Anna, looking like this, he's the last person I want to see. After Anna's last visit, I had asked her to find me a caregiver and then told her not to come see me again. The highly anticipated wedding was held at the end of the year. The winter was especially cold, and this northern city was covered in a thick blanket of white snow. I asked the doctor to give me the maximum dose of every drug they had, and I managed to hold on until that day. Nick's wedding was in Hawaii. There was no winter or snow there, only brilliant sunshine. The entire wedding was live-streamed for the world to see. Nick walked down a path by the sea, holding a bouquet of flowers. On screen, his gaze was firm. His lips curved into that familiar smile. This is nice. I like this close-up. It's as if he's walking, step by step, toward me. My vision blurred. I thought I saw Nick, really there, walking toward me with a bouquet. He smiled and said, Peter, come with me. He took my outstretched hand, and amid the applause and cheers, we announced to the world that we were each other's love. Peter Wilson's heart stopped at 3:30 p.m. on December 25th. Though he was skeletal when he passed, his expression was peaceful, even tinged with a faint smile. This donation was different. There were no heartbroken family members, no wails of grief. The entire ward was quiet, so quiet it was as if a life hadn't just ended here. The doctors, who had been waiting, bowed deeply to him before beginning the procedures for his body donation. To promote such a selfless act of love, the local media reported on it. Famed actor Peter Wilson passed away today at 3:30 p.m. after a battle with illness. His love lives on. His life continues through his final decision to donate his body to medical research. The news quickly shot to the top of the trending lists. The young man people had briefly forgotten was once again on everyone's lips, this time because of his death. The wedding by the sea was underway. As if to declare their love to the world, the entire ceremony was being live-streamed. The hall was filled with A-listers. Everyone who was anyone in the entertainment world was present. Nick sat in the dressing room, smoking one cigarette after another. They had already called for him several times outside. The romantic music had looped 3 times. He looked at his dapper reflection in the mirror and gave a self-deprecating, bitter smile at his own cowardice. 6 months ago, due to tax and financial issues, the Brooke family's empire was on the verge of collapse. It was then that the Lin Corporation extended an olive branch, but a lasting alliance had to be sealed with blood. So he had accepted the marriage to Bella Lin. After discovering he had been used by Peter, Nick had thought, with a sense of self-loathing, that it didn't matter who he married. In the end, it was all just a calculation of pros and cons. But today, he felt a strange sense of panic. He couldn't stop thinking about the person he hadn't seen in so long. He angrily stubbed out his half-smoked cigarette and, before pushing the door open, arranged his face into a perfect smile. Amid the chorus of blessings, he took Bella's arm and walked slowly to the rhythm of the music, finally stopping at the center of the stage. The host was the most famous MC in the industry, and his words flowed like a witty, endless river. Nick looked out at the guests, his gaze lingering on Anna Chun. He saw her suddenly stare at her phone, cover her mouth, and begin to sob. On a whim, he pulled out his own phone and glanced at the screen. Famed actor Peter Wilson passes away after illness. His final act a gift of love. Just one look, and Nick felt like he had been struck by lightning. His mind went completely blank. Only after the host called his name 3 times, telling him to kiss the bride, did he seem to snap back to reality. He suddenly dropped the bouquet and strode off the stage. "Where is he? Where is he?" He roared at Anna Chun, his eyes bloodshot. "Boston," Anna managed to say, already choked with tears. After getting the address, Nick ran, a man possessed. No one knew what had just happened. All that was left was a room full of stunned guests and Anna Chun, who finally broke down and cried her heart out. Nick booked the first flight out. He felt as if a piece of his heart had been violently torn out. Born into a family like his, steeped in fame and fortune from a young age, he had long grown accustomed to hypocrisy and deceit. He never opened his heart easily. But Peter was the exception. He was always so pure, so careful, like a fragile gem that was somehow, stubbornly still growing. That summer, on that isolated film set, they had cautiously confirmed their feelings for each other. He had decided then and there that no matter how hard the road ahead, no matter how much opposition they faced, he would hold Peter's hand tightly and walk it with him. But that one video had shattered all of Nick's illusions. He couldn't believe that the person he had cherished and protected was selling himself out in front of others just for a few connections. First, he didn't believe it. When he had pinned Peter against the wall and questioned him, all he wanted was an explanation. No matter how flimsy, how absurd, how illogical, he would have believed it. But Peter had smiled and said it was a shortcut. That day, he had smashed his phone and gone home and drunk himself into a stupor. He hated Peter for deceiving him, but he hated himself even more for giving his heart away so easily. Later, he forced himself to get back on his feet, throwing himself into one film after another. He was even willing to sacrifice himself by marrying into the Lin family. He knew how Bella felt about him and had tried to explain things to her at the very beginning. But Bella had just laughed and said, "What do I need a heart for? I can't see it or touch it. What I want is you." After that, he never saw Peter again. Anna just said he was on vacation. When he asked again later, she just brushed him off. He had assumed Peter didn't want to see him. He never imagined that in just one short year, the next news he would hear of him would be of his death. It was late at night when Nick arrived at the hospice in Boston. The facility was situated by the sea, peaceful and isolated from the world. He rushed to knock on the door, only to be told that Peter's body had already been transferred to the medical university for further procedures. Nick stood there, stunned. He couldn't process that in just a year Peter was really gone. The on-duty nurse eyed him impatiently. "Are you family for the patient in room 12? Room 12? Oh, that's Mr. Peter Wilson. He was in a lot of pain at the end. We all felt so bad for him and kept asking if he had any family, but he would just smile and shake his head. Who are you? A friend?" Nick pictured Peter smiling and shaking his head, and he finally broke down, tears streaming down his face. "Family. I'm Peter Wilson's family. Can you please let me see the place where he spent his last days? Oh dear, why didn't you come sooner? He was so lonely at the end. All he did was watch that entertainment channel every day, the one with that variety show with Nick Brooke and Bella Lynn. I heard he was an actor too. Such a poor soul." Hearing this, Nick pulled his mask up higher and followed the nurse inside. The hospital corridor was a sterile white, and the moonlight streaming in made it feel even colder. This wasn't a bustling city hospital. There was only an infinite silence. This is a hospice care center. The patients who come here are all terminally ill. Besides groans of pain and crying, you don't hear much else, the nurse said, talking to herself as she walked ahead. When they reached Peter's room, it had already been cleaned and tidied, as if no one had ever stayed there. The small room held only a metal frame bed and various medical instruments beside it. Nick imagined Peter lying on that bed, hooked up to all those machines, and he began to sob. He hated him. He hated him for tricking him, for using his feelings for his own gain. But he never wanted him to die. He wanted him to live. Nick asked the nurse if Peter had left behind any belongings or even a few words. The nurse just shook her head. He didn't bring much with him when he came. Before he passed, he asked us to burn all his belongings. He said he had no origin and no destination, so it was best to pretend he had never been here at all. The news of Peter's death was quickly replaced by other entertainment headlines, like Nick Brooke bails on his own wedding. In the top-floor office of the Brooke Corporation, Nick sat slumped on the sofa, dark circles under his eyes. Across from him, a man, though well past 70, was sharp and imposing. He radiated an immense pressure just by sitting there, perfectly still. "What do you plan to do about the Lynn family? We still need their financial backing," the man said flatly. "Grandfather, I don't want to get married anymore." "I'm sorry. Is it because of that boy? The one from the school for the deaf?" Nick didn't answer, just sank deeper into the sofa. "Why don't you understand? In your position, you are destined for a different path. Your parents died young. Are you going to abandon the Brooke family now?" Faced with his grandfather's reprimand, Nick felt torn apart by his own emotions. He couldn't get over Peter's death, but he couldn't ignore his responsibilities either. Peter used to envy him, saying he came from a good family, and he would always boast, of course, "I'm an expert at being born into the right family." But in reality, his parents had died young, and his grandfather had been incredibly strict with him. Before meeting Peter, he had never dared to defy his grandfather. Sponsoring Peter had been his one and only act of rebellion. Nick drank himself into a stupor. It was already dawn when he got home. He absent-mindedly opened a package on the table. Inside was a hard drive. He was about to toss it aside when he saw the return address. He shot up, his hands trembling as he opened his laptop. Boston Mercy Hospice, the package was from Peter. Nick opened the drive, almost giddy with hope, but its contents hit him like a bolt of lightning. "I can agree to your terms and buy the video from you. I can also give up all my current resources. The only condition is that you never bother Nick Brooke again, and that video of me and him must never surface." "Oh, are you really willing to go that far for him? What has Nick Brooke given you that's so special? I can give it to you too. He's given me more than you could ever afford. Don't touch Nick Brooke. Otherwise, I'm not afraid to go scorched earth." The video on the screen played on, but outside the screen, Nick was frozen, tears streaming down his face. So there was no betrayal, no deception. Peter had never debased himself for resources. On the contrary, Peter had been protecting him even after his death. Nick started frantically replaying every detail of his interactions with Peter. Him smiling and saying it was a shortcut. Him drunk and struggling against being taken advantage of, only to fall asleep peacefully in his arms when he arrived. And that Q&A screening, the person next to Anna. The more he thought, the more it hurt. Nick clutched his chest, curled up on the sofa, and wept uncontrollably. Nick desperately tried to find any trace Peter had left behind, but he discovered that Peter had truly left nothing. So he drove to the mountains where they had filmed the series. The sets had been mostly dismantled after the crew left, leaving only a mess behind. Nick sat alone under that tree, from sunrise until the sky was filled with stars. Peter, you bastard. If you were sick, why didn't you just say so? If you were being threatened, why didn't you tell me? You were dying and you didn't even tell me. Who the hell wanted you to handle everything yourself? I'm a big deal, you know. I don't need you to protect me. Peter, do you hear me? There was no answer but the wind howling through the valley. Nick remembered the night they wrapped filming, how he held Peter's hand and said they would walk the hardest roads together. But he had broken his promise. He had let go of Peter's hand when he needed him most, even pushing him toward those disgusting scumbags out of spite. While Peter was being tortured by his illness, he was busy playing up a romance with Bella. While Peter was dying, he was marrying another woman. Nick slammed his fist into the trunk of the tree next to him, again and again, until it was bloody. But the physical pain was not even a fraction of the pain in his heart. So he took out his phone and posted on X. My love is lost forever, Peter Wilson. They used our love to threaten you, so I'm going to tell them that I love you, and I'm not afraid of anyone knowing. And the people who threatened you, I'm going to make them pay one by one. The post went live and blew up the internet. The servers almost crashed. Before netizens could even figure out what was happening, Nick posted another photo. A picture of his and Peter's hands. They were intertwined, with matching red cord bracelets on their wrists. Bella had once secretly taken Nick's bracelet and worn it. When he found out, he had thrown a massive fit. Now he stroked the red cord on his wrist, his eyes filled with a crazed hatred. Nick was preparing to hand the hard drive over to the police. Extortion was a crime, and they deserved to pay the price. Other artists they had threatened in the past could only swallow their pride and take the loss, because in this industry, everyone has a secret they can't afford to have exposed. But Nick wasn't afraid. Peter wasn't his secret. He never was. On the way down from the mountain, Nick got a call. Nick, stop this. It's gone far enough. I thought you would understand what I was trying to do. I only wanted that boy to leave you. I didn't know about his illness. He shouldn't have died. Now that he's dead, you'll never be able to forget him. His grandfather's voice said, filled with an infinite weariness. Nick suddenly couldn't understand his grandfather's words. His hands gripped the steering wheel, his mind a complete blank. After a long pause, he spoke, his voice trembling. Grandfather, was it you? Did you have someone film us and then use it to threaten Peter? Child, who else but me could have discovered you'd gone astray so early? Who you love, man or woman, I don't care. But that person can never be an obstacle in your path. I thought you understood that so-called love is nothing but a fleeting cloud. Lasting gain is what allows you to stand at the pinnacle of life. A member of the Brooke family should know how to weigh what's important. Nick suddenly started to laugh. A loud, wild laugh that turned into hysterical sobs until he could barely breathe. The hard drive on the seat beside him seemed like the ultimate irony. The person he wanted revenge on was his own grandfather. So in the end, it was he who had hurt Peter. He was suddenly filled with regret. If only he hadn't paraded Peter out of that school for the deaf like some kind of treasure all those years ago. If only he hadn't encouraged Peter to enter the entertainment industry. If only they hadn't filmed that gay romance series. If only he had never fallen in love with Peter. But in life, there are no if-onlys. Nick clutched the hard drive to his chest. It was the last thing Peter had left him. The naive boy had been planning for Nick's future even as he died, never knowing that those people could never have threatened Nick. It was all a setup just to make him leave. As the car crashed through the guardrail on the cliffside, Nick closed his eyes in a moment of release. They say that when you die, your departed loved ones come to greet you. But in the end, he never saw Peter. He realized everything was already too late. Epilogue. Cut. With the director's shout, the final scene of Too Late was wrapped. The last shot was of Nick's character, clutching the hard drive as he crashed into the cliffside guardrail. Although a dummy was in the car for the wide shot of it rolling down the cliff, the crew had arranged a minor impact for the close-up to simulate the feeling of the collision. After the shot ended, Nick didn't get out of the car. Everyone assumed he was still immersed in his character, processing the emotional breakdown and crying he'd just performed. It wasn't until Peter shouted Nick's name and dragged him out of the car that everyone realized something was wrong. People scrambled to call an ambulance. Peter, usually so calm, held Nick and trembled uncontrollably. The life and death separation in the script had already left him emotionally raw, and seeing Nick lying unconscious in his arms now felt terrifyingly real. Fortunately, it was a false alarm. Nick had just briefly fainted from the impact. After a full checkup, he only needed to stay in the hospital for a day of observation. Once the director and crew were reassured, they left, leaving just Peter and Nick alone. "Peter, I heard you were crying your eyes out earlier. Is that true?" Nick asked from the hospital bed, his eyes sparkling. Peter, who was sitting by the bed, put down the half-peeled orange in his hand and looked at him with a sigh, not saying a word. Nick sat up and wrapped his arms around Peter, whining playfully. "I knew it. You're the best. I'm sorry I worried you." Peter squirmed away awkwardly and sighed. "Aren't you afraid someone will see?" Their feelings for each other had developed naturally. When Nick confessed, Peter had followed his heart and said yes. But this kind of physical contact off-screen always made Peter blush. And Nick, perversely, loved to cling to him just to see him get shy. Now that he was sick, he was even more shameless. Nick wrapped his arms around Peter from behind, nuzzling his neck. Like a puppy, Peter didn't dare turn to look at him, because he could feel his face turning as red as a ripe tomato. The person behind him grew bolder, his lips lightly kissing his neck and ear. Every touch sent a shiver through his body, down to his soul. "Nick, Nick!" Sensing things were getting out of hand, Peter tried to appeal to Nick's reason. But the man behind him flipped him over, pinning him underneath. His eyes, fixed on Peter's, were filled with an undeniable passion. "Peter, don't you dare leave me," Nick murmured, his voice thick and husky, his eyes misty. He was still hung up on what Peter had said before they wrapped filming. The show was ending, and in real life they were facing the same problem as their characters. Should they continue their relationship? The characters in the show at least had their family backgrounds to fall back on. But the real Nick and Peter were just newcomers to the industry. The road ahead would only be harder. So Nick had once tentatively asked him, "If we were in a similar situation, what would you do?" Peter, always quiet, had been silent for a long time before saying, "Probably make the same choice." Nick had panicked. "No matter what, I would never leave you," he had said, annoyed. Peter had just looked at his pouting face and smiled. Now, looking at the still stewing Nick before him, Peter found it a little funny. He leaned in and gently kissed his lips. Nick stiffened for a second before his kiss became more demanding, as if he wanted to devour Peter whole. As a result, at the wrap party the next day, everyone was whispering about the kiss marks on Peter's neck. Peter angrily pinched Nick under the table, but Nick just grabbed his hand, pulled him up, and arm in arm they toasted the director and the crew. With that, the rumors about them were finally confirmed. It was a secret announcement, a veiled confession. A year later, the show aired and became a massive hit. The two of them appeared together publicly to promote it. As the show's popularity exploded, so did their fan bases. They shot to the top of the A-list. Besides their individual fans, their shippers were even more active. The hashtag "It's Not Too Late" was constantly trending, and the three fan groups, along with the general public, argued endlessly about whether it was real. Then, a new topic suddenly exploded: Nick Brooks' secret industry girlfriend, which listed item after item that Nick supposedly shared with a certain actress. For a moment, rumors of Nick's relationship spread like wildfire. Many irrational fans turned on him, defanning and slinging mud. All sorts of accusations flew, and anything and everything was used as evidence to attack him. It was clearly a calculated move by a rival, but ordinary netizens were easily swayed by the narrative. Just as everyone was waiting for Nick to issue a clarification, he posted on X. The photo was of a single sheet of paper. The caption read, "Married. Do not disturb." The post nearly crashed the internet. Someone quickly recognized the paper as a marriage certificate from a certain country. You had to go to a specific country to get one. Those who knew, knew. The internet erupted. "It's Not Too Late" exploded again. In a residential building in some high-end Beijing neighborhood, Nick was carefully washing dishes in the kitchen. Every time he made a sound, Peter would let him have it. So this was your brilliant PR strategy? Nick, have you lost your mind? Peter paced back and forth in the living room, growing more agitated as he watched the online frenzy. Although their relationship wasn't exactly a secret in the industry, going public this completely was a huge risk. Meanwhile, Peter's X account had also blown up. Thousands of comments were pouring in, all asking if he was the one who married Nick. At this point, silence was a confession. Peter was trapped. After finishing the dishes, Nick washed some fruit and brought it to Peter, trying to curry favor. Well, I had no choice. You saw what they were saying online. This was the only way I could prove my innocence. I don't even know that actress, so don't be jealous. Okay? Jealous of what? I think you did this on purpose, Peter said, throwing an orange at him. So what do we do now? Peter, save me, please. Nick started whining. Peter looked at him, sighed in resignation, and posted on X. Just 2 words. It was me. And with that, Nick Brooke and Peter Wilson's relationship was finally out in the open. Years later, when people asked Nick how he had convinced Peter to go public, he would puff out his chest and say proudly, "A man has his ways." After they came out, there was some negative chatter, and the topic of same-sex relationships became a hot-button issue for a while. But their fan bases only grew, and their popularity was in a league of its own. The 3 fan groups became unprecedentedly united. The shippers all sighed, "I can't believe I lived to see my ship become real." The solo stans just said, "As long as you're happy." If there was one victim in all this, it was probably Nick, who was sentenced to a month of housework, plus a month of sleeping in the guest room. Although, sometimes Peter forgot to lock his door, and someone would sneak in under the cover of darkness. But that's a story for another time.